The topics to cover are basically to introduce you to weed watching. And I know some of you are veteran weed watchers and you've been doing this for a while. Some of you are very new to this, and it seems like it could be intimidating trying to identify all of the stuff that's in your water body, but it doesn't need to be. And there's a safety network out there to help you out, either friendly local folks that know their plants, or you can always rely on me to answer questions for you. So topics to cover include plant zonation, so you get familiar with where plants are in your water body. I'll talk a little bit about native plants, which are okay and welcome, and then invasive plants and animals that you should be on the lookout for in your water bodies. That's really the core of weed watching. I'll talk about the status of infestations in New Hampshire, so you have an idea of what's nearby. And then some of the biggest threats for Tuftonboro based on your water chemistry and your location in the state. Then I'll talk specifically about how to weed watch, what the methods are. It's pretty easy. And then, of course, like I said, we'll do some question and answer sessions. So starting off first with zonation. When you think about your water body, think about standing on shore and looking out into the lake or pond that you live on or like to visit. And you get to see a sense that there are different zones of plants that are out there. When you're standing on shore, the plants that are right down around your ankles, the ones that are rooted in the soil and sticking up above the sediment, are the emergent plants. Those include common things like cattails and all the grasses and rushes right along shore. These are really important for stabilizing the banks. And they also, on days like today where we've had a lot of rain, the rain that runs off the landscape and into your lake luckily gets filtered by a lot of those emergent plants. So it helps trap sediment and it helps purify that water to some degree before it comes rushing into your lake or pond. As you move out a little bit deeper, you get into the floating leafed plant zone. Those include the common things like yellow and white water lily, and there are a few other plants that mix in there. And then as you go a little bit deeper, you start to see in the foreground here, especially, you see that there are these underwater plants, and those can be mixed in with the plants that are floating, or they could be wholly alone in the water column without any cover over them. So those are the different zones that are very typical in our water bodies. I do also want to call to your attention that there are resources out there for you. This is online and you can access it yourself. If you go into a search engine like Google and you type in DES Lake Mapper, you will get a map of New Hampshire. And if you zoom in on that and find your water body and click on it, you can find all kinds of reports that the state has prepared. It could be volunteer lake assessment reports or reports from UNH, other state reports. And in the lake assessment reports, you'll find a map. I've used Lower Beach Pond here for an example. That report has a lake map that shows you where the plants are in the lake. So these little symbols are all the different plants. And then this table here shows you what each of those symbols means, and then the relative abundance of those plants in the lake. So are they sparse or are they scattered in the water body? Sometimes you might see that in some places they're very abundant. So this just gives you an idea of what's what and where to find it. So it's sort of a cheat sheet for your lake. And every water body that's greater than 10 acres has one of these. It may not be current, but it should still be representative of what has been documented in your lake at some point. Now, taking a look at some of the common native plants. So these are in almost every water body in the state. For example, these are the emergent plants right along shore when you're standing on shore. You have things like burr reed, these tall green stalks with these little spiky white seed heads. There's lots of sedges and grasses and rushes. These all sort of blend together in a mosaic around the shoreline. Pipewort, these are usually in the water. They're either really short like this, or they can be as tall as a few feet tall. And they have these little white button-like tips on them. The rushes that I mentioned, some of the tips with sedges and rushes. Rushes are round, so if you take a rush and you roll it between your fingers, it feels round to the touch. And the sedges have edges, so they're three-sided or three-angled, so you can feel the edges on them. Like I mentioned, cattails are common in that area. Pickerel weed, this one is a low grower with a pale purple flower, really good young of the year fish habitat. And then arrowhead, this one has an A-shaped leaf to it. You can find all of these in your shoreline areas. They're all native, all normal. Moving into the floating leafed plant zone, of course, we have the white and the yellow water lily. The white ones are a little more rounded for the leaf. And if you guys remember the game Pac-Man, the leaves look like the little Pac-Man guy with the little V-knot shape mouth or notch to it. And then the yellow water lilies are more oval with a heart-shaped base. And then you'll probably start to see yellow water lilies soon. The flowers of these are the first flowers that are up in the spring in most of our lakes. Floating heart and water shield mix in a lot with the bigger water lilies. These guys are little. They're about a couple inches across. So if you think of the size of the coin dollar, the dollar coin, those are about the size of these. And the water shield is a little bit more oval. You'll see that during the season, some of them change color and lose some of the green pigment to them, and they look really pretty on the water. And then we have a bunch of pond weeds that have floating leaves as well. So you'll find these are the really common floaters. And then the underwater plants are all kind of tricky to identify, and a lot of them look a lot like the invasive plants. So it's something that you guys would want to take a look at a little bit more closely, because a lot of the invasive plants and the native plants look alike. Oops, I'm trying to just set a mute. Oops. So let's see. So I'm going to start up here and go around. Bladderwort is one of the really common plants that you're going to find. It's a free floater, so it's not rooted to the lake bottom. And I like to call this one the lake tumbleweed, just because it free floats all around the water body. And it is a really common one that you can find in most water bodies in the state. So there are several species. This one here in the top left and this one here in the top right are both bladderworts. So they could look a little bit different from each other. This one here in the top middle is hornwort or coontail. It looks like a raccoon's tail because it's so thick and fluffy at the tip. Coming around to the side, we have a lot of different water naiads. These are really low growing and they're really brittle, so they break apart and drift around the water body. They have these little hair-like leaves on them. Down deeper in the water bodies, this is robin's pondweed. This one looks like a giant feather frond or an ostrich fern down along the bottom, and it usually covers the bottom. Native milfoil. We usually say milfoil is a dirty word in the state, but we actually have about 6 native milfoil plants in the state. And by native, I mean they're well behaved and they don't grow aggressively and take over like the variable milfoil that we have. So the native milfoil is totally fine. The tape grass, this one looks like a big ribbon or like a, I always use food analogies, especially at dinner time. This one looks like a fettuccine noodle, bright green, and it grows up off the bottom. And then the last one in this category is waterweed, and it has leaves in whorls of 3. And this is significant because one of the invasives that I'm going to talk about has leaves that are in whorls of 4 or more, and leaf count matters. So waterweed, the native, has leaves in whorls of 3. And then I do want to touch on algae, because this, with all of the talk that we've had of cyanobacteria or harmful algal blooms, this one is one that really concerns people, and we want to make sure that you know the difference. So even though this top photo here looks a little alarming, this plant is totally fine. This is a filamentous green algae, and it just is long hair-like pieces of algae. They're slimy, and they stick together and they billow when they produce oxygen. And you'll find these rolling around on your lake bottom or stretching out from shore, usually by the time we get into late July and August, when the water is really warm. And I don't know that we'll get to a point where we don't have crazy winds anymore, but when it's been calm in the lake for a little while. So this is okay, despite the look of it. These 3 photos down across the bottom here are something that we'd like to know about right away. Cyanobacteria are harmful algae that can produce toxins, and they usually manifest as a scum on the surface of the bottom. So they don't have this cloud-like or cotton candy-like appearance like this top photo. They're more of a scum or a bathtub ring, all these lovely analogies, or they make the lake look like pea soup. So anything that looks like any of these bottom photos, please let us know because we'd like to take a look at them. We have a person in our program who specializes in cyanobacteria, and I would definitely refer the photos or the information you send to her to take a closer look. A lot of the times we can't be certain until we have the specimen underneath the microscope, but it's a good idea to get it second checked. I do know that parts of Tuftonboro have had cyanobacteria blooms. Winnipesaukee, Tuftonboro, Mirror Lake has had some blooms. I do also want to mention Gliotrichia, which I don't have a photo of, but that is the algae that looks like the snow globe in the water column, the tiny little white fuzzy dots that accumulate usually July, August on Winnie. And that is also a harmful algal bloom. It doesn't scum, but it looks more like a snow globe. So that's something we would want to know as well. And we'd sample for that. So some different things to look for there. And a note about the cyanobacteria, even though some of them can be harmful and toxic, they're not always toxic. So we often have to issue an advisory if the counts of the cyanobacteria are over a certain threshold. So that's why we have to look at it and count it and identify it. And then we sometimes will do toxicity testing on it. All right, so for Tuftonboro specifically, and this is all water bodies in Tuftonboro, the high-risk species are, of course, variable milfoil. That's the one that we've had in the area for a while. And one that we don't have yet that I'll show you some photos of is hydrilla. This plant is in every state around us except Vermont. And milfoil is problematic because it will grow thick and grow 15, 16 feet tall. Hydrilla can top out at 25 feet tall, and it can be super thick and it can grow really deep. So that's one that we're really worried about. And the hydrilla is the one that looks like that whorls of 3 plant that I showed you in a previous slide. So I'm going to show you a couple pictures just to drive that one home. And then for some animals, because it's not just about plants these days, animals include Asian clam, spiny water flea, and Chinese mystery snail. And I'm throwing a lot at you right now, but what I'm going to do is this is all being recorded and you can watch this again. And I will also share my slides with you guys so that you have a PDF of all of the slides so that you can use it as a sort of pictorial to go back and take a look at things again. So let's take a look at some of these things so you have some pictures. So again, I'm going to start with the plant zonation, but this time all of these are going to be invasive species that you should be looking for with weed watching. So starting back on the shoreline with those plants that are rooted in the sediment and come up above the surface of the water, we have purple loosestrife. This one is a really common one that we see in late July and August. So when you come close to shore with your weed watching, you should also look up on shore and just see if there's anything like this one or the next one that I'm going to show you. Purple loosestrife has a square stem and leaves that are opposite or whorled. And then they also have a spike of purple flowers on them, usually, like I said, July or August. So in addition to this training, if you guys could let me know if you want a Weed Watcher kit mailed to you. Just send me an email at the end or sometime in the next couple of days and I'll send you a kit. The Weed Watcher kit has fact sheets and photos of all of these, so you have hands-on concrete information that you can use as well. So purple loosestrife is one of those to look out for. A mature purple loosestrife plant can produce up to 2.5 million seeds in a growing season, and they're the size of pepper grains. So they just spread in the wind and then the water very quickly. The next one is Phragmites, and for those of you that live near 19 Mile Bay, at the end of the bay near the town swim beach, there has been a stand of Phragmites, so that might be something that's familiar to you. It's been under management for the last couple of years and it's reduced, but there still are occasionally a couple stems of this. The common reed is a really tall, 14, 15, 16 foot tall plant. It has these long, maybe 10 or 12-inch side leaves off the main stem and this giant seed head that is at the top of the plant. So it will grow in moist soil, but more alarmingly, it will establish on shore and then send these runners out into the water body. And every point where these runners anchor is where they root and a new plant will come up. So I have seen these form islands in lakes, and I've also seen them form big stands in front of people's houses. So you want to keep an eye out for this one if it starts to colonize. And if you guys live on a road or have a culvert crossing coming into the lake, any of those locations, like a main road, any of those locations could potentially be fair game for Phragmites to come in. High traffic areas tend to move these plants. All right, so we're going to move out a little bit deeper into the floating leaved plant zone. And this one, we only have one in the floating leaf plant zone to look out for. And it's bizarre looking. It doesn't look like any of the water lilies that are out there. This is water chestnut, and it's not to be mistaken with the water chestnut that you have in your Asian food. This one doesn't taste nearly as good. And it has this wicked seed on it that's woody. It's about the size of maybe a small ping pong ball. And it's got these spines on it. So these spines allow this seed to hitchhike in the breast feathers of birds and sometimes the carpeted bunks of boat trailers. So it can move around between water bodies. And the plant itself looks like this rosette here. It's this cluster of triangular shaped leaves. And they all have these little puffed out float areas on the stems. So that allows this rosette to float on the surface of the water, and it's tethered down to the bottom. So it will be mixed in with the lily pads, but it doesn't look anything like a lily pad. So it should be easy to spot. This is a photo of it in full force. This is the Nashua River a few years ago. And this plant's a little tricky because it starts out little, like tiny, like a saucer of a coffee cup. And then it grows to about the size of a dinner plate over the course of the growing season. So what happens is because of that dramatic growth, all these plants sort of stack on top of each other. So the photo here is showing you about a foot thick of plant growth on the top of the Nashua River. So it can be pretty horrific. So the only good news about this plant is that it's an annual. So if we find it early and we pick it before it produces seed, we can take care of it fairly easily. All right, moving down into the tricky zone. The submerged or underwater invasive plants are tricky because a lot of them have natives that look a lot like them, and they are underwater. So it's hard to get a hold of them and take a look at them. And I do always encourage some type of device to get down there and grab a sample of these plants so you can take a closer look at them. So starting off with what is probably the poster child of invasive plants in New Hampshire, this is the variable milfoil. And we do have this in over 70 water bodies in New Hampshire. The plant, I stole this from one of my volunteers. The plant looks like a gray squirrel's tail. It's fluffy and tubular, and it just has that squirrel tail-like growth in the water. The plant has leaves that are feather-like, and they're whorled around the main stem. And it's called variable milfoil for a reason. It can be the diameter of maybe an inch to the diameter of a large coffee can. It can get very big. So it's very different in every water body that I've seen it in, but most typically it looks like this in the water column. This is a photo from Lee's Pond in Tuftonboro, but those of you that are on Winnipesaukee have probably seen this growing in various locations. This is the plant in flower. It doesn't really need to grow up to the top in flower, doesn't need seed. The plant reproduces easily by fragmentation. You can see over here in the lower left, the plant is growing a root as it's growing in the water column. And then the plant will either auto break off or auto fragment, or a boat or wind will chop it up. It will drift, settle, and grow. So that's why this plant is so effective at colonizing different water bodies. And just going through a couple pictures, this is variable milfoil in the foreground, starting to colonize in a new patch. And then you can see once it starts to settle, new stems come up, and then from there it just grows very quickly. So that's a couple images of what it looks like in the water column. This one you don't have directly near you guys, but it is starting to spread throughout the state, so it's worth sharing. This is curly leaf pondweed, and it's narrow, maybe a finger's width for the leaf width, and it's crisp like lettuce and wavy, very curly or wavy. You can see a couple of the real zigzaggy leaves here. This one grows a few feet tall in the water body, so it's a little bit lower growing. And it has an early spring and a late fall boom cycle for growth. So you may notice this one. Keep an eye out for it. I'm starting to see it move around New Hampshire. Hydrilla, this one is the one that I mentioned that you guys should really be on the lookout for. Not in New Hampshire yet, but it is moving throughout the entire Northeast region and actually across the US. Hydrilla looks a lot like the waterweed, but remember the waterweed has leaves in 3 around the stem. If you were to count the individual leaves of this one, it has 4 or more leaves. And then if you were to look closely at the leaf margin, and let me skip to the next slide because, oops, actually that doesn't show it as well. So this one has little teeth on the edges of the leaves. So if you were to hold it up in the sunlight or a bright light, you can see little serrations or teeth along the leaf margins. So hydrilla has teeth on the leaves and leaves that are in whorls of 4 or more. So those are good key factors to look for. So this one spreads by fragmentation as well, but it also has this little tuber at the bottom of it. It's like a little potato or seedling, or where the seedling would come from. And it is a favorite of geese and ducks, and they'll eat it and it will survive their gut tract and come out and still be viable. So waterfowl could potentially spread this one as well. And they're seeing this in New York State, where these shallow ponds or stopovers for migratory waterfowl. There are no boat launches and people aren't boating on these water bodies. So it's waterfowl that are spreading it. Mm-hmm. All right, going into some invasive aquatic animals. The first one is the Asian clam. Now, this one is in about 8 water bodies in New Hampshire, and it's not really near you guys yet, but because a lot of you have areas of your water bodies that are fairly sandy, this Asian clam likes sandy soils. So it is one to keep an eye out for. Asian clam is a hermaphrodite. So it has a male and female portion in the individual clam. So it doesn't need another clam. So one clam introduced into a water body can create a population all by itself. So that's why they're so tricky. They are about the size of a dime or smaller, and their coloration can go from black to yellowish or greenish. The key identifier for this, so a lot of you have probably seen the big oval mussels that are in the water bodies. Those are normal, they're native. These guys are little and they have these ridges. Think of a ridged potato chip. They're very ridged on the shell and very easy to see the ridges and feel the ridges. And this is what they do to the water body. So it doesn't look like it's, horrible, but all of these shells accumulate on the bottom of a water body. This is Cobbett's Pond down in Windham. And then eventually they can accumulate in fish beds, and they can cause horrible trouble for the reproduction of fish that use beds like this, because they inhibit the eggs from developing and for the parent fish of taking care of the eggs. So they can cause some ecological problems in the water body. The Chinese mystery snail is around. We've had this one in New Hampshire since the 80s. This is a really big shell. It's about the size of a golf ball, and they are common in a lot of lakes in New Hampshire. We've not found that they're a negative impact yet at this point, or that they're dangerous, but they are undesirable because when you step on them, you know it. They're big and you feel it if you step on them, especially if they get really thick. Some of them, these are banded mystery snails. You'll see the stripes on them. We do have a lot of different types of mystery snails in New Hampshire, but these big Chinese mystery snails are the ones that we tend to be most worried about in terms of spread. The thing with plants is the plants are big and you can see them. The animals, they have microscopic larvae, so they're really hard to keep an eye on and to try to mitigate the spread of them. So they are sort of the silent spreaders for that reason. The zebra mussel, we don't have yet in New Hampshire. It's in Massachusetts and Vermont for the closest states to us. And this one is about the size of a pistachio nut. And it has, you can see all the shell variations here, black and brown, tan and brown, black and white, some type of stripe pattern to it. And the key identifiers of this one is that pistachio nut size, it's shaped like a D, so it has a flat side and then it arcs out. And then it has these little sticky strands that come out that allow it to stick to surfaces. So if you see any small mussels or clams sticking to your boat or your dock or rocks or other mussels, that's something that we should know about. And then the last one I wanted to share is the spiny water flea. This one is in Vermont and New York, and it's tiny. So in our lakes, you guys may have heard of Daphnia or water fleas, normal water fleas. Those are normal parts of our plankton community, and they're really important for fish and for taking up algae from the water column. The spiny water flea is similar, except it has a spine, this really big long tail. And this is made out of silica. So when fish go to eat this, that silica or that glass tail gets stuck in the digestive tract of the fish. So they have a really hard time getting the protein and nutrition and other things that they need because of all of this material stuck in their digestive tract. So they're little. This is somebody's fingertip with one sitting on the fingertip. And then this is a swivel and a fishing line. So you can see all of these attached here. And this is how they're spread. They're spread in bait buckets, on fishing lines and other fishing gear. So just keep an eye out for these little guys. We're actively monitoring Winnipesaukee every year for these, and we have not detected them yet. We just started monitoring Lake Sunapee, and we haven't found them yet. And then when you guys, those of you that participate in our volunteer monitoring programs, we do look for these in your plankton samples. So that's something that we keep an eye out for. Just a few more slides. Just going to give you an idea of the state of the state. So this is the current distribution of invasive species in New Hampshire. You can see all of these red dots. That's all variable milfoil, and that's why I call that one sort of the poster child of invasive species in New Hampshire. And then we have a scattering of other different invasive plants that have been documented in the state. And this is not because we don't survey up in northern New Hampshire. We just haven't discovered any infestations up there yet. All of our infestations are in the southern part of our state so far. And zooming in on the lakes region with Tuftonboro right here, you can see that we have documented variable milfoil in Lake Winnipesaukee, but we don't have any other documented invasive species in Tuftonboro, although I should mention, of course, we do have the Phragmites in 19 Mile Bay, but there are no other water bodies in town that have anything. Nearby, you do have a lot of variable milfoil in other towns around you. And then other things over in Brookfield, up in Mountain Pond, up on the hill, that one's above Kingswood Lake. The Eurasian water milfoil is up there, but that's a really hard to access water body, so I don't think it's a threat to you guys. And then over in Milton is a spiny naiad, which is a plant that favors typically shallow, dark water bodies. So I don't really think it's a threat to you guys. But yeah, mostly variable milfoil right now. So a few methods on weed watching. It's a really proactive approach. I know a lot of you have had programs on your various water bodies on and off, that some of you have been really regular with it. But the goal is to catch infestations early. I've had weed watchers find plants as single stems in their water body, which is pretty impressive. And it allows us to have a rapid response to those infestations and prevent further spread. I'm dealing with a couple cases right now where the lakes did not have weed watcher programs and milfoil got into both of them. One lake has about 100 acres of milfoil that just nobody noticed or reported. The other lake has about 12 acres. An acre is hard to deal with, let alone 12 or 100 acres. So that's why weed watching is so important, is to catch things early. And I just want to mention Lake Winnipesaukee, Tuftonboro, and all towns around the lake has been in an active management program. So the milfoil in that lake is much reduced, but we still want to keep an eye on it, and we're going to continue to manage it. But it's much better than it was 5 or 10 years ago, especially Tuftonboro. You guys have whittled down your populations of milfoil to not very much in that portion of the lake. So weed watching is simple. You're going through the training tonight, and all we ask is that once a month from May through September, you monitor your water body. I don't encourage you to individually monitor Lake Winnipesaukee or Mirror Lake or Lower or Upper Beach Pond, but if you have other people that are interested in doing this, you could split the water body into sections, and each of you could be responsible for a piece of shoreline once a month from May through September. You don't need to be a biologist. You just need to know what to look for. And when in doubt, you can always reach out for more information. Like I mentioned, we have the Weed Watcher kit, and I can mail one of those to you upon request. I just need your mailing address. And the methods for weed watching, which I'll talk about for a second, are all outlined in the Weed Watcher kit. And I've already said we've got fact sheets and photos of the plants. And I mentioned how you guys can go online and find plant maps and depth maps of your lake, so you know what's been documented there before. So when you're out on the water body, you guys can go out on a powerboat or a canoe or kayak. Paddle boards are really good. Those of you that are water bugs and prefer to be in the water, you can snorkel. So it's really something for everyone. But the goal is to have a shoreline. So we'll use this as an example lake here. And I've drawn lines where the shoreline sections are cut off. So we've got volunteer John and volunteer Kate, and they each have a stretch of shoreline. So once a month, they'll go out and they'll traverse their shoreline from shore out to where they can't see bottom anymore. And they zigzag it. And the goal of zigzagging one way or the other is to cover as much area in that zone as possible. And when you're out there, you scan the surface for any fragments of plants that are floating around or any floating plants. And then you scan the bottom for any rooted plants that are down below starting to grow up. And what are you looking for? Anything that's new or out of place that wasn't there last month, last year, anything that appears to be growing quickly and taking over. Sometimes natives do that, so it's good to know what's a native and what's not. For plants, if you see a lot of fragments drifting around the lake, it could be the sign that there's an invasive in there. And for animals, if there are a lot of clams or mussels in a particular area in really high number, it could be an invasive animal. And then any clams or animals, mussels that stick to surfaces, like those zebra mussels, those are good things to look for. And if you find something, make a note of the location. You can do this high tack or low tack. You can triangulate between points. You can say it's in front of the blue house on Route 109, on the shoreline of the lake, but just have an idea of where you saw it. And if you can carefully collect a voucher specimen. So if it's an animal, just take one, or if it's a plant, take a stem of the plant. Just make sure you collect any pieces that break off so you're not spreading the plants. So collect a representative sample and then let me know what you found. So the best thing to do and the easiest, and if you like instantaneous gratification, email me a photo. I will respond right away. The best way to do that is to take a paper towel or a piece of white paper and lay the plant or the animal on there and arrange it so that the leaf detail or any other details can be seen. And then place something with scale, a coin, a ruler, a pen, something of known size so I can see a scale next to the plant or animal. Take a digital picture and then email it off to me. If you email something, I encourage you to keep it in a baggie in the fridge so that if I do need to get it in hand, or potentially for milfoils especially, I need to sometimes do DNA on it to verify the species because sometimes it's tricky. So just hold on to it until I give the all clear. Sometimes I may just ask you to mail it in to me so I can do DNA or take a closer look. And then that is the basic methods. The Weed Watcher kit will also be helpful. And there are other slideshows out there that I can provide links to that give you more in-depth on lots of invasive plants or lots of native plants for you guys to learn. So those are some options for you as well. So that's the overview. You guys are welcome to unmute and ask questions, or you could also, let's see, looking in to see if there are any questions so far, but feel free to unmute and shout out a question.
So, Amy, this is Lynn. I'm wondering, there are quite a few of us, and I know some of the ones like I invited are we all live pretty close together. How is the best way to divide up? Is it, I'll get my house and two on either side, or should we draw a little map? I mean,
Yeah.
Dividing up makes a lot of sense.
So it's very subjective because some people feel like they just want to look in front of their own houses, and other people feel like they can kayak or powerboat, half a mile or a mile around the lake. So I would say if you guys could get a local group together from individual water bodies and look at a map and have people volunteer for sections, they can take pieces that they want, or you could evenly divide the lake up. I would get a sense locally for what people feel like they want to do and then divvy it up that way.
Okay, thank you.
And how early would you start doing this, Amy?
So considering the fact that ice out happened on Winnie in early April and other lakes, fairly around that time, I would say soon. Like I said, May through September is optimal. You could certainly go into October if you're, year round. I can tell you that I was in Barrington at the end of last week, and milfoil was 3 to 4 feet tall in that lake. Wow. So it's up and growing. And a lot of times milfoil doesn't necessarily die down in the winter. It will persist under the ice, especially if the ice is thin like it was this year. So it's getting to that time where the time is right to start looking.
Okay.
Let's see. I had a question from Norma if I will be sending the slideshow around. And yes, I will PDF this and send this around to you guys so that you guys have it.
Amy, I have a question.
Yeah.
So right now, like full lake level is 504.32, and right now we're at like 504.89, like definitely higher than our normal full lake level on Winnie. How does that affect like the growing season for the emergent plants?
So it will be a little bit slower, but I don't predict that those water levels will, well, I'm not going to predict the forecast because nobody seems to be able to do that.
That's
But
true.
with the water high, I think your emergent plants will be slowed down a little bit. Those usually are a little bit slower anyways. Sometimes you'll get a couple lily pads first and then a couple of the other underwater plants. And then those emergents seem to take a little bit longer. So those will probably, especially the invasive emergents, like the purple loosestrife and the common reed, those will start up, June. Most likely you'll notice them starting. So you have a little bit of time for those, but the underwater plants and the floaters are starting now.
And then just another follow-up question, we technically had, ice in and ice out on Winnie, but anybody that lives around here and has been around here knows that it was across the whole state, just a very, very strange winter.
Yes.
So just thinking about, limited ice cover and the potential for increased plant growth in general or algae growth in general, is that something that, DES is considering, thinking long-term management wise as having an impact?
Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's all. I'm done.
So that's a really good question, Bree. And with climate change and the shorter ice cover periods that we're going to be seeing and we're already seeing, that is definitely a concern of ours. We're going to start to see, and we're already seeing warmer water temperatures in the lakes sustained longer into the fall. That's why ice cover comes on so much later. And then the warmer days and the rains that we get in the winter are eroding the ice or whatever ice forms earlier. So we will see more algal growth, good and bad algal growth, and more plant growth over time due to that warm water continuing throughout most of the growing season. I've been a biologist in New Hampshire for 26 years now, and I have not seen warm temperatures like this. When I first started, summer lake temperatures were 72 to 74, and now I'm measuring temperatures into the mid 80s in the summer, which is crazy in the course of just 26 years.
Definitely. And just a note for anybody that is on Winnie, LWA, the Lake Winnipesaukee Association, which is who I work for, is tracking some of the cyanobacteria observations and blooms that we're seeing. And just a follow-up comment for that is last summer we had more cyanobacteria observations and alerts and advisories than we ever had previously before. And talking to Kate Hastings, the HAB coordinator at DES, kind of like twofold, just so everybody knows, one thing, we're seeing more of it and people are a little bit more educated about it too, which is great. So I just wanted to make a little plug for that. Thank you so much for answering my questions and for this presentation, Amy. It was really great.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to chime in on what you said, Bree. I do the plankton analysis for Winnipesaukee. So when we go out and we do the Spiny water flea sampling, we collect plankton samples for both plants and animals in the water. And my colleague does all the animals and I do the algae. And I can tell you that this year in all of the bays, cyanobacteria were dominant. And they weren't at the bloom level, but they're there in the background. And you can't see them in the water column, but they're there. And that's surprising given the chemistry of Lake Winnipesaukee. So it's certainly an indicator that change is happening.
Yeah, definitely. Those are great points.
Jill and Kent?
Yes, hi. We were wondering if Japanese knotweed is a problem in the lake. Around the edges.
Hang on, I'm not sure if my audio is bad. Can you repeat that?
We wondered if Japanese knotweed was a problem for the lake because it's around here a lot all over the land.
It is a problem. Sorry, go ahead, Kent. Did you want to add to that?
Well, we have a seasonal stream that comes down between our that seems to have sprouted up. And because I think the water carries those seeds, whatever, down towards the water's edge. I don't know what it is. Is that an issue? Or?
You guys are having microphone problems.
Okay, so it's not just me. I got the Japanese knotweed question, and it is an invasive. So Doug Saigan is my counterpart on dry land, I like to say, and that's one that falls under his purview. Japanese knotweed's particularly nasty because it has underground root systems that can travel for 60 feet from the original plant. So it is certainly one that will grow. And Doug is a good contact for suggestions for management. And I will type his email into the chat. And you can certainly reach out to him and ask him some questions about management and any terrestrial plants that are of concern. Japanese barberry, bittersweet, burning bush, anything like that.
Great, thank you.
Yep, and if I missed anything because we can't hear you, feel free to type it in the chat and I'll catch up on it. Norma, you had your hand up?
Yes, regarding purple loosestrife, we have a bit of an infestation over by Route 109, the boat launch on Mirror Lake, and I've been doing quite a bit of remediation over the years because, quite frankly, my other weed watchers don't want to touch it. So I've got that down fine, bagging the top and so forth and digging up and whatever. A few years ago, there was some talk about some type of bug insect that was becoming effective against purple loosestrife, but I haven't heard a thing for a long time. Do you have any updates on that?
I do. So back in the late 90s and early 2000s, Doug Saigan with Department of Agriculture did a pilot program introducing the Gallorusella beetle, and it's a leaf-eating beetle. And it was introduced on a widespread basis in New Hampshire. And then from the sites that it was introduced, it migrated itself out to other sites and started grazing down the purple loosestrife. It worked really well. Unfortunately, after 2016, I noticed that the purple loosestrife started creeping back up in the state. And I suspect that was the first year that we had a long, pronounced drought. And then we had another drought following that a couple of years after that. So I think what happened is the beetle populations got hit and were not able to recover, and the purple loosestrife did. So unfortunately, even though it's a great program, there's nobody rearing the beetles anymore. Middlebury College used to do it, and then Enviro Science used to do it, which was a company on its own, but nobody's making conditions for beetle populations to grow anymore. So I don't have a source of beetles to help introduce into areas where purple loosestrife is on the rise again, but I'm looking and I'm hoping to be able to find someone that's willing to rear them, but they work. Lynn.
Yeah. Are there specific conditions that make the sour bacteria bloom? Like, is it shallow? Is it because of the plant around it or the animals?
Yep. So cyanobacteria are there in the background anyways of most of our lakes and ponds, typically at low nutrients. But specifically when you get higher nutrients, usually higher phosphorus and higher temperatures later in the season, that's when you tend to get more cyanobacteria growth. So it's warm water and higher nutrients. The Gliatrichia that you guys have in Winnipesaukee is a little different. It likes low nutrient lakes because it comes off the lake bottom and it takes all of the nutrients that it needs out of the lake sediment, and then it travels up through the water column. So it's adapted to that type of condition, but all the other ones need it in the water column, and they can take in a lot of extra nutrients. And in fact, a lot of cyanobacteria can take atmospheric nitrogen and process it to be able to use extra nitrogen that way. So they're savvy little plants, microscopic plants, animals, they're kind of on the line there, cyanobacteria. So yeah, high nutrients. And we're starting to see higher nutrients in a lot of our water bodies because of all of the runoff that we're getting from these high intensity, short duration rainstorms, like the gully washers that we're getting.
Okay, thanks.
I did link the DES report that was put out on gliotrichia in the chat, so there's a picture there, Amy, just so you know.
Thank you.
I have just a quick question. My brother lives on Kanasaka, which is just on the other side of the highway from Winnipesaukee in Center Harbor. They had some closures this summer due to the cyanobacteria, whatever, however you pronounce that. How does that travel? How does that pollinate? How does that colonize? And could that be really affecting that part of Winnipesaukee soon? Because there's so much of it there.
So they travel in surface waters. They flow from water body to water body through surface connections, but they also are up in the air. So on windy days, they can be blown up into the air and travel short distances into other water bodies. And the toxins can also be aerosolized too. So the air around the lake could also contain toxins. So they do move, and their toxins do move in a couple of different ways. And boats could potentially move them around as well in trace amounts.
Wow. Have you had any alerts on Winnipesaukee recently for those high levels? Yeah. You have. Whereabouts?
I can, so one of the things that we've done with LWA is track all of the observations and alerts and advisories that have been on Winnie for 2022. And we have an interactive map we've created. So I can link that in the chat for you so you can see exactly where they were. And
it's, you go by LWY or LWH?
LWA, we're the Lake Winnipesaukee Association.
Yep. I can read my writing. Okay, LWA. All right, awesome. I'll look that up.
Yeah, it's a really great local resource for exactly what's going on Winnipesaukee and in surrounding areas too, right, Bree? Yeah. I put the email address for how to report blooms to DES in the chat. That email goes to Kate Hastings, who is our harmful algal bloom program coordinator. And if you send photos of the blooms, she will be able to let you know if it is cyanobacteria or not.
Okay.
So we report the plant and the animal invasions to you and the blooms to her.
Yeah, and Kate and I work together a lot, and we exchange emails for things that end up in our email bins erroneously. So it's all good if you forget who gets what. As long as it comes to one of us at DES, it'll get to the right person.
Okay, great.
Pam, do you have a question?
Oh, no. I think Lynn and I will have Shelter Cove covered. And then we know that Jill and Kent will be over there on Moltenboro Bay, right around the corner from us. But I'm Lynn's next door neighbor, so very excited to be a part of this. And we'll do what we can.
It's Melvin Bay.
Oh, pardon me, Melvin Bay. Sorry, Melvin. Melvin, but we're Shelter Cove. So sorry. I mean, we're all Tuftonboro. We don't want to get mixed up with Moltenboro.
It's all good. You're all connected.
Yeah. Oh, this has been great. Very, very interesting.
Nice job.
So can we just say in the chat that we want a weed watcher kit or not, or should we send you an email?
If you guys don't mind sending me an email, that would be great, only because the chat goes away once the call ends. So emails would be great with your mailing address, and I will send a kit out to you right away.
Okay, and Bree, while you're on water monitoring, is she still?
I was going to bring that up, but I didn't want to kind of take over at all. Yeah, water monitoring is Steve Wingate on this call, perchance?
I invited him.
I saw Steve, but I didn't know. I'm calling you out, Steve. I'm sorry. But yeah, I'm working with Steve Wingate, who is which all of you may know, the Tuftonboro Conservation Commission. Gosh, sorry, that was hard to get out. But I'm working with him to be able to do that, and we are going to be able to do water quality monitoring in your area, Lynn. So I will definitely contact you, and we can schedule a date to discuss more. Does that sound good?
Sounds great. Thank you.
Sure.
All right. I'm not seeing any other questions. If any questions come up, feel free to email me anytime with questions. I thank you all for joining tonight. I'm glad it was a rainy night so that you guys weren't distracted by nice outdoor weather. But feel free to reach out anytime, and I thank you all in advance for your extra eyeballs on the water body.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Amy. And
Thank you.
if you send me the recording, I'll just blast it back out to everybody and they can pass it around as they need to. Is that okay?
Yeah, what I'll probably do is process it and then post it on the DES website and send you a link, only because the file size will be huge. And I don't want to do that to your email bins.
Okay,
The
great.
slideshow PDF I will send to you to send out to everybody, and that will be a smaller file.
Great. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Appreciate your
right.
time.
See you.
Of course.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Take care.